Joining us now is Cheryl Chumley, an opinion writer at the Washington Times. So, Cheryl, last night was kind of a different debate a little bit. It was more focused around one topic at the very beginning compared to the past ones where it kind of jumped around a little bit. Last night's had a different theme, a different feel since there was no audience. What were the takeaways for you from last night?
Well, the big takeaway, as you already discussed, was Joe Biden coming out and promising to bring forward a female into the VP slot. And as you said, Bernie Sanders has promised that as well. But I think the bigger takeaway is that Joe Biden has really stepped up on the momentum. And we're going to see in the next primaries that Bernie Sanders is going to have to make some tough decisions because the poll numbers certainly aren't going in his favor any longer.
And, last night to me, it seemed like a time where Senator Bernie Sanders either had to really step on the gas if he wanted to make some progress in the delegates. We saw him kind of trail behind. We saw him underperform on Super Tuesday. We saw him lose Michigan pretty badly. And so he is trailing now in the delegates, and it doesn't seem like he has the momentum, as you were just saying. Is there anything that we should maybe take away from that? Is it kind of the idea that maybe his campaign is flailing? They're throwing in the towel a little bit? Why do you think that he's not going after Joe Biden as hard? Is it the moment of the coronavirus?
I think the country is a little bit distracted with the coronavirus, and rightly so. But Bernie Sanders, I think the big takeaway is that he rode to such media stardom based on bringing forward the youth vote, the youthful energy. And that contrasted so sharply to Joe Biden and to a lot of the other candidates. But the fact is, when you cut through the clutter and get right down to it, youth don't vote as much. I think he capped out and he just can't bring forward the youth to come forward and vote for him over an elitist entrenched candidate like Joe Biden.
And it was interesting to me last night, too, because apart from maybe healthcare, there weren't too many differences when they were having their debate. I mean, they kind of went back on Joe Biden's record. That was kind of the more contentious moment when it came to Social Security. The Iraq War came up again. But when it came to like the big ideas that voters, especially young voters, as you bring up, care about, they seem to be a little bit more on the same page, whether it be the Green New Deal or what to do with the economy moving forward or kind of the approach to how they would take on President Trump and Senator Majority Leader Mitch McConnell, things like that. Do you think that they are a little bit more united behind a similar type of agenda and that'll kind of resonate a little bit more when they get to the convention in Milwaukee?
Well, I actually have been saying for some time that the Democrat Party is basically socialist. They just don't come out and say it as openly as Bernie Sanders does. But if you do look past the rhetoric and you do listen to what they say and then look at the platforms on their own websites that they put forward, they are very similar. Whether it's Joe Biden, Bernie Sanders, before Elizabeth Warren dropped out, they were pretty much all the same. They were very tightly wound on the same message. And honestly, this is a little bit of enlightenment for voters who think that they're getting a big difference between Joe Biden, the Democrat, and Bernie Sanders, the socialist. They aren't.
And that seems to be something, too, that the Republican Party is ready to use. In fact, at the last debate, I believe the GOP kind of released a statement saying no matter who wins tonight, the candidate will be a far-left socialist come November. So it's kind of the idea that they are painting whoever they go up against, kind of making those differences between what President Trump is doing and what the Democratic nominee wants to do. But I want to touch on Milwaukee one time again, because it's kind of in the people's minds whether or not Joe Biden will actually get this nomination, and if he does, whether Bernie Sanders will be there to support him. Do you think that Bernie Sanders will be throughout this race until the end? And do you think he will ultimately up endorsing Joe Biden?
To answer your second one first, I think Bernie Sanders will end up endorsing Joe Biden. And I don't think that Bernie Sanders, to answer your first question, will make it to the end. I think Bernie Sanders is going to have to make a decision soon because his funders won't stay in and he's pretty much capped out.
No, I think you're right. And we see this too. He needed to have a big day on Super Tuesday, and he just didn't have it. That was kind of the whole strategy for this campaign. So acknowledging that point, how does someone like Joe Biden, after what you saw last night at that debate, the first kind of one-on-one matchup with another contender, how do you think that he'll fare against President Trump in debates?
Well, I don't think Joe Biden is going to prove a very good match against Donald Trump. I think he's a lot weaker. I think he makes too many gaffes. And I think on the national stage, the contrast between someone with Donald Trump's energy and record of leadership in the White House versus Joe Biden with the blue collar, I'm just average Joe, I'm Joe of the people. I don't think it's going to resonate with the American people.
Yeah, and we should get a better idea tomorrow. As I said, 4 states are coming out to vote. Ohio, actually, we just learned, maybe kind of pushing that off a little bit. They're going to court to kind of see if they can push back their primary elections. But we should at least have a better idea come tomorrow. In some pretty big states come November, Arizona, Florida. It should be interesting. But Cheryl, thank you very much for joining us tonight.